The Australian Financial Review.
Get a lot of energy with working with people and joy out of seeing people succeed and flourish and understanding the journey they've been on. So that's really rewarding and something that I find an amazing part of my role. Sometimes some support would be useful, but the closeness and the joy you get of working with people is also part of the wonderful thing about working in a smaller organisation.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review, and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between, and along the way, we're hoping to get some really great advice for our listeners. So my guest today is Lou Oppenheim, the Executive Director of Sydney Dance Company. Hi Lou, how are you?
Hello Sally, lovely to be here.
Now, Lou, as I said, you're the Executive Director of the Sydney Dance Company, which is a contemporary dance company that last year performed in every state apart from Tasmania, as well as offshore in the US, the UK, Serbia, Spain and Singapore. So you are indeed actually quite a national, if not international company. You have a staff of just over 200, although about 3/4 are casual. And in 2024, you put on 153 performances. And my fun fact is that you operate Australia's largest public dance program. You hold more than 75 dance classes a week for the general public. Have you taken a class?
Not, but you can do them at home in your lounge room. So that's where I secretly do it, so my staff don't need to see me in activewear.
Do you do the beginners class, or have you graduated from beginners?
I'm almost an absolute beginner. The last time I did a dance class, I was age 12.
Okay, but you're doing it in the privacy of your lounge room.
Correct.
Okay, I love that. Okay, Lou, we haven't got very long, 15 minutes. We're going to start the clock right now. My first question is, what time do you get up in the morning? What happens?
I get up around 7 o'clock. My partner also works in the performing arts. So when we're both in Sydney, we always try and have breakfast together because we never know what's going to happen at the other end of the day in terms of shows or seasons or touring. So that's our moment really together with a good, long, strong, long black. I then head into work. I have the benefit of travelling by the new metro, which is amazing.
Life-changing?
Absolutely life-changing. Coming out at Barangaroo and you emerge into this amazing, beautiful world with that beautiful cove. And I think Sydney Harbour is just stunning, and walk round to Walsh Bay. Head into the office. I have a bit of quiet time. The dances generally don't start to 9:30. So our day starts a little bit later than for a lot of people because we do work into the evening. So I have a little bit of quiet time to get some thinking work done before I then kick off the day.
My next question is about a pivotal moment in your career. Can you tell me about a project that you worked on, a promotion that you were given, or a job you applied for that changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
I originally I'm a trained engineer, so nothing to do with the arts. My arts practice was music, but then trained at university and did engineering and arts. So ended up majoring essentially in computational linguistics. From there, moved in to being a consultant with Boston Consulting Group, and partway through that, really wanted to do something that had more of what I would call a triple bottom line, both a social purpose as well as more a profit-driven bottom line. And there was an opportunity at that stage through BCG to take an opportunity out with a not-for-profit company or a for-purpose company and work with them. And that really changed the trajectory of my career. And it happened at the time, the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra and all the symphony orchestras across the country, they were owned by the ABC and they were all becoming independent companies. So there was a big change in business practices and business models at that time. So I was brought on particularly to work through that process at the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. I walked in, I went to one rehearsal, I saw the performers on stage, and 23 years later, I haven't left the arts. So absolutely pivotal change of my direction in my career.
What is computational linguistics?
At the time, it was literally about getting computers to understand English. So at the time, it was about all those terrible things when you used to phone up and say, I want a pizza in Footscray. And they would say, great, we'll deliver your sneakers to Manly. It's that translation process of when you speak or when you type and then a computer being able to understand it and provide advice. It's really evolved entirely into now what we would understand as AI. This is several decades ago, so it's really evolved now into AI in terms of computers really being the next brains for the world.
With engineering, Do you find that you use your engineering brain in your current job?
Absolutely, exactly. What it taught me to do is how to break down problems, to work through them systematically, to be really data-driven, to be really looking at what the evidence is telling me and to work out how to solve a problem very methodically on a step-by-step basis.
I love that. So how do you use data in an arts company?
An arts company is exactly like every other business. We're trying to understand what the drivers are of our income, the drivers are of our expenses. So that's audience numbers, it's financial numbers, it's trends for us in our classes participants. I think the unique thing in an arts company is often it's more what would be called traditionally qualitative or subjective feedback and subjective data, but that still can be modelled in terms of what audiences, for example, overall are telling us about what they think of our performances or where we're looking at sales trajectories. We also do a lot of data modelling in terms of pricing with the current cost of living crisis. That's a really key point for us about can we ensure that our audience members can still afford our ticketing, but how much we also have an increasing cost base, so we have to understand what the balances are in terms of our income and expenses.
What's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
I think the best piece of advice when I reflect on all my different roles is people talking to me about the role of people. And as you get further up in a leadership role, I think 90% of my job is about people and people management. There's lots of numbers, there's lots of other things that go in there, but a lot of it comes down to culture and to people and how you treat people and how when they walk in the door, making sure that you're always being transparent, you're always being fair. A different person walking in the door with the same question will always get the same answer. Was probably something that's held me in good stead in my career overall.
So when you say that 90% of your job is people-based, which I totally get, can you break that down a bit further for me? Like how much of that time is spent with your executive team?
Mm-hmm. So I have an executive team of 8 people, but the reality within that, we don't have an HR department in our arts organisation. So I am part HR, a lot of HR. Each of my senior leaders also take significant responsibility for HR within their own teams. We meet as a team every week. And that meeting is focused on longer term issues or strategic things or kind of bigger picture things to make sure we're all on the same page. Then I meet with each of them at least every 2 weeks, if not every week, depending on their precise role.
So do you wish you had an HR department or actually do you like it?
I get a lot of energy with working with people and joy out of seeing people succeed and flourish and understanding the journey they've been on. So that's really rewarding and something that I find an amazing part of my role. It is occasionally useful to have someone else to have a conversation with or to work through things. When we're doing recruitment, I'm literally the person also writing the emails back to people. So there are degrees that sometimes some support would be useful, but the closeness and the joy you get of working with people is also part of the wonderful thing about working in a smaller organisation or an organisation like the arts.
So on that note, don't go away. We're going to take a short break. Come back and we're going to open the delightful chatterbox.
Excellent.
Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Lou Oppenheim, the Executive Director of the Sydney Dance Company. Lou, this is our section called the Chatterbox. In front of you is a shiny brown box. I'm going to ask you to pick out a question and let's get going. If you had time to learn a new skill, what would it be?
I've always harboured a secret ambition to be a jazz singer.
Oh.
I would love, just in a beautiful, dark, murky club, standing leaning against a piano. I can't sing, so there's quite a skill development to go, but that would be my new skill that I would love to learn.
And why jazz?
I don't know, there's something slightly loose, something free, but something kind of very personal and intimate about that nature of that performance that I think is a really special form of music.
Would you say that you're a routine person or someone who doesn't particularly get a lot out of routine? Because jazz, you could argue, is not full of routine.
I think that's one of the ironies in that I am very routine-based. I do like to have a structure. I'm very process-oriented and, fact-driven rather than just free-ranging and blue sky. And it's one of the things I love about working in the arts is I'm often working with people who come from a very big picture vision area, and I can put some of my more engineering and process and structured thinking into working and collaborating with them and hopefully coming up to the best of both worlds.
Right. Okay. I love that. Have another fish in the box.
Okay.
If you could relive one day in your career, which day would it be and why?
I think one of the joys that we have with what we do is you get to see community members see an art form for the first time. And I remember sitting behind a group of kids watching a dance performance and just hearing their reactions, seeing their reactions the first time of seeing that on stage. It's really special. That really reminds you about why you do what you do. And it's something that anytime it happens for me, it's something that gives me joy and fills my heart.
Love it. Okay, have another fish in the box. What are your favourite interview questions when you're hiring somebody?
Great question. I always love to give scenarios. I like to give people a problem depending on the role. Say if it was a customer service person, imagining a situation where you had a customer coming in with a problem concurrently with the phone ringing, concurrently with, the printer's out of paper. How would you work through it, or how would you prioritise it? What I want to see in an interview is how someone thinks and how someone breaks down a problem. And I learned some of that through my interviewing with Boston Consulting Group, because they do a lot of, how many piano tuners are in Australia type questions, or more complex ones. And they're not necessarily wanting you to get the right answer. They want you to break down and articulate how you're going to solve a problem. Your experience is one thing, but it's actually about the smarts that you bring into a job, your personality that you bring into the job, that I'm really interested in learning about.
And what about someone, say a chief financial officer or a senior finance person? What sort of scenario might you put to them?
Sometimes with a job like that, I've actually said, read our financials and tell me what the narrative of the financials say. Trying to actually get them to interpret back rather than just tell me about their experience, trying to make it a bit more real for them.
Paint a story for
Paint
me.
a story, or when you've seen them, what questions would you have about the numbers, or what might have been going on in this area or this year? Again, there's not necessarily a right answer, but part of it's about, particularly for a senior role, seeing have they done a bit of research about what's been going on in the company. Finances are one thing, but, for me, it's all about the so what. So what? They're the numbers, but what does that mean? Does that mean that we're sustainable, we're not sustainable, that there's a challenge in this area, or there could have been something quirky going on? Have they got the context or the ability to be able to translate what's in the accounting sheet to everyone else in the organisation? So they're the types of skills that I'd be really testing in those types of roles.
Interesting. I love the way you have those scenarios, and so to give you an idea of how people are actually thinking about those roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, have another fish, Lou. If you could swap jobs with someone for a week, who would it be and why?
One of the jobs I've always loved, and I think it's because of my data kind of driven brain, is an election analyst. Someone like Anthony Green from the ABC, who's obviously recently retired at the last federal election, that ability to have all of the data about what's going on across Australia, what's going on with every single seat within Australia, and also that amazing touchscreen, which you can play with and actually show a whole lot of different data. I don't necessarily have the political knowledge that he had to be able to do that, but that kind of level of a job that really deep dives into a whole lot of analysis, I've always admired and I think would be really fun.
Interesting. So what would you want to know?
All of it. I love data and I love understanding the trends and data. And it's one of the things I need to manage, making sure that I'm not going too deep and playing in that space too much and allowing others to give me insights rather than my really happy place, if I really want to go there, is a spreadsheet full of numbers.
But I suppose with Anthony Green and say with electorates, what's the story that you're trying to find out?
I think it's the human story and what is influencing people in those stories. So what's influencing their decision to go in a particular way. People are also disassociating from mainstream politics. So why people are going different places and what's influencing them. You can have pages and pages of numbers and it won't tell you anything. It's about really gleaning what the story is behind it. What's the so what? Is there a pattern in it? Is there different demographics or different cuts or different segments that you can divide it up to that therefore tell you more insights rather than just the raw numbers?
So what are you trying to find at Sydney Dance Company?
When I'm doing that, I'm trying to find an insight which will help me make a business decision.
Such as?
When we looked at the number of under 30 tickets sold, do we think we were hitting the right price point for that demographic? The world has changed. Friday, Saturday night used to be the big night to go out in town. Particularly in the last few years, it's moved slightly to Thursday night, but Saturday nights are coming back. So it's about the ability to be agile, look at the data and understand what that might mean for our future business decisions.
So why do you think Saturday nights are coming back?
I think people are starting to want to come back into the city. COVID was really tough for the performing arts, as we know, and for many, many other industries and many, many people. And I think people got into a habit that Saturday night was a night on the couch. And very gradually, I think people are starting to gradually want to experience a night out. But I think we're layering that over the top of a cost of living crisis and recognising a lot of people in the community are doing it really tough.
But Thursday nights are really popular, is that right? What does that mean for the city and the society as a whole?
Yeah, the trend to Thursday night has really been around the working from home trend, and a lot of people obviously have the freedoms to be able to work at home or are working at home on an ongoing basis. But I think the most consistent day that people do tend to work from home, if they are, is a Friday. So I think the notion that Thursday is the end of the working week or the last time they're in a larger city or in a larger regional town is that Thursday night. Whereas Friday night, they might be at home, they're preparing for the weekend, they might be dealing with kids' sport on the Saturday morning, all those sorts of life things start to take over on a Friday night.
Interesting. So Thursdays and Saturdays are becoming the big nights.
Yeah, and Friday is a bit more challenging.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, on that note, our 15 minutes is up. You have passed the Chatterbox section with flying colours. And I now have one more question for you, which we ask everybody, and that is, if you weren't the executive director of the Sydney Dance Company, what would you be?
I'd be guessing I'd be working at an AI company or somewhere along those lines, continuing the journey that I had originally in my career as a computational linguist. If I have my I want to do anything in the world sense, give me a jazz singer any day.
And on that note, Lou, our time is up. I've really loved hearing about your career starting as an engineer and the way you have used your engineering expertise to help you frame the way you think about your job right now. For example, how to tackle problems. I love the way that you haven't necessarily known where you've been going, but here you are, leading a dance company. Your interview questions are really interesting in the way that you give people actual scenarios and ask them to tell you the story and solve perhaps a problem. You're clearly really, really data-driven, and we so hope that you find a smoky nightclub somewhere and become a jazz singer. We'll be there. Thank you so much for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss.
Thank you, Sally.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced by Lap Fan and Martin Peralta. Our theme is by Alex Gower, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.